welcome back to C&N Movie Time. This is episode 3, and unfortunately we are not together this week. So, hi Nick. How is Columbus, my friend?
It is very snowy outside right now here in the old Columbus.
That's pretty funny, because up here in Wisconsin, all the snow has melted. We just pushed it all to you. Anyways, we're here this week to talk about another one of my favorites, and Nick just watched it for the first time last night, so we're going to hear what he has to think about Moonlight. First off, yeah, if you don't know what this movie is about, it's a coming-of-age story, which goes straight to my heart. Anything coming-of-age, I absolutely love. I'm a sucker for it. But this is a young man growing up in a black community who's unsure about his sexuality, and he's discovering so much about himself, and it's a really personal story for the director. So we'll get into all that later. First of all, Nick, what did you think of this thing, my man?
I had been told by some people that it was very similar to this movie called Pariah. Mm-hmm. So I kind of had an idea in my head already of what it was going to be like, and honestly, like, I don't feel like the two are very similar, other than the fact that they are both based in the kind of LGBT community in a sense.
Mm-hmm. I have not seen Pariah yet. I was going to go watch it, and it's not on Netflix anymore, so I have to hunt that one down.
Those bastards.
So, is there anything else you wanted to say before we jump into things, or?
No, I was just letting you take the wheel on this one, buddy.
All right, man. Well, I think the first thing to talk about here are some themes of the movie, because it's a pretty thematically heavy movie. It says a lot about masculinity, fatherhood, what it means to be a parent, how your community shapes you as a person. Do you have any scenes in particular that come up about any of those things?
Oh, I mean, well, the whole entire movie, first of all. And then the first thing I noticed, like, throughout the whole entire movie is the color blue and the repetition of the color blue throughout the movie, and its reflection on masculinity for sure. The first scene in particular that comes to my mind is the scene after he's been beat up about halfway through the movie, when he's being picked on by this guy named Terrell, and he goes back into the school and everything you see is blue. To the windows, the doors, everything is blue, and it has this embodiment of, like, toxic masculinity.
And that's when he snaps, right? That's when he gets suspended?
Yeah, and he doesn't even get suspended. He gets taken to jail. Like, he goes to juvie.
Right. Yeah. Says something about our society.
Right.
But I guess the first thing I want to talk about is, because it's one of the things that hits hardest for me, is the character of Juan, played by Mahershala Ali. He actually won the Oscar for this one. How did you feel about the fact that he was only in the first act of the movie?
I loved Juan's character a lot, and I think that he was meant to kind of be, in a sense, a role model for Little.
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
He doesn't have a father. I'm pretty sure the person that his mom had was like a fling, or like not even like a stepdad, like maybe like a boyfriend or something like that. So he didn't really have any like positive like male role models in his life. And it's intriguing to me when he first meets Juan, because he is both terrified and intrigued by this masculinity and this masculine figure. So
right, because Juan's he's a dealer, right? He's out on the streets all day. He confronts Little because Little is hanging out in this trap house. He's hiding there from all these kids, and Juan finds him and kind of takes him in. Kind of reminds me of this quote I read the other day. Somebody sent it to me. It says, "Introverts don't make friends, they just get adopted by extroverts." And that's kind of what I saw there. It was Juan seeing something in himself, or in Little, that reminded him of himself, and he really wanted to help him out and help him be able to thrive in the community he was being brought up in.
Well, it kind of reminded me of like finding like a puppy or like a kitten behind like a dumpster or something. Like He was so like nurturing, and like the first time you see Juan, he's the first character that you meet in the entire movie, and
Mm.
you immediately see him like dealing. But you have this like notion, and it's so like interesting because he's so gentle with Little, and he's such like a father figure for him and everything like that, and he's very nurturing.
Yeah, it's definitely something Little needed growing up. And I should mention now, before we go further, that the main character has 3 different names throughout the movie. It's like a way of portraying the growth and how you're portrayed, because each one's like a nickname. So you have Little, and then Chiron is his actual name, which Shy is the first part of that, so that kind of speaks to his character. And then when he's fully grown, he is Black. That's his name, and he lives in Atlanta, I think, at that point, and he's kind of followed in Juan's footsteps. And that's kind of what I was going for, is Juan is this absolute role model for him, and this is why he won the award, even though he's gone after the first, half an hour of a movie. His presence is still very much felt, and Chiron and Black is modeling himself after what he saw Juan doing and trying to become that person, because that was such an influential person in his life.
Well, it's interesting to me because you see Juan pick up Little or Chiron,
Mm-hmm.
and he's what, maybe like seven at the time.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
But he doesn't actually get him to talk. Juan does not get him to talk. It's Teresa who
Mm-hmm.
gets him to talk.
Yeah, it's a motherly figure, because that's what he's known. He's around his mom, and that's the only kind of nurturing person, if you even call that nurturing. His mom is struggling with a lot of things on her own.
And half the time, it's interesting how she's represented too throughout the film, because color-wise, she's either represented by this lightish blue or like a teal color or pink.
Mm.
And there's no in between. Pretty much, she pretty much decides when she wants to be a mom and when she doesn't want to be a mom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she's obviously struggling with a lot of addiction and problems on her own, and yeah, it's a very much back and forth. She's sometimes asking him for money so she can get her fix. She's very protective of him and doesn't want him around Juan and Teresa, because she knows the life that Juan leads and how dangerous it is. So it's a weird duality there. That's a big part of this movie.
She straight up like forced him to give her money. Like
that was a brutal scene.
Yeah.
And they do something really cool with that, where the characters are looking straight into the camera. The director in the commentary called it like these portrait shots, where the character is talking to the camera, and it really puts you in the shoes of the character in like these really intimate moments. And that's the first time it happens, is when she's confronting him and about to ask for money.
Yeah, like definitely breaks the fourth wall, and it gives you this, like you said, intimate portrait of like what is going on in that scene.
Mm-hmm. The other time that happens is at the end of the movie, when he meets up with Kevin at the restaurant. That's the only other time I think that they use the portrait shots.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, just something interesting. I would highly recommend listening to the commentary track by Barry Jenkins, the director. He has a lot to say about this movie, and he's really inspiring. So.
Oh, there was definitely a lot of love that was put into the movie, for sure.
Yeah, it's apparently based on a play that he adapted, but a lot of things got brought in from his life. Like, Little's mom is very indicative of what Barry Jenkins' mom was like. He talked a lot about that and how it was kind of a healing thing for him to portray this character on screen.
That's the way to do it, for sure. That's how you get the healing done, through creative processes.
So, the next character I guess we should talk about is Kevin. So Kevin is kind of a blend between the masculinity and the sexuality that Little is feeling. He is much better at hiding his emotions, and actually beats Chiron at one point, while when they're in private, he has an intimate relationship with him at times. How did you feel about that?
I thought it was very much so interesting in general because Kevin was so willing to like listen to the bullies and everything like that and do whatever they told because he didn't want to be outed or like thought of as being gay or anything like that. So he was
It's
like,
about
okay.
survival at that point, I guess. Like, when Little's being bullied when they're playing that game and he starts to run away, Kevin goes and they have like this wrestling moment. It's kind of forcing the masculinity out of Little because that's how you survive. You don't get beat every day if people think you're tough.
Right, because he even says, I knew you were tough. I knew you were tough, Little.
Mm.
And Kevin's character is interesting in general because, like you said, it goes back to the whole survival thing. Lots of he blends in well to the culture, and even the first scene that you see him in again, he talks about banging this chick and getting detention for it.
Mm. And it was kind of cool that that came to Chiron in the dream. He walks through Teresa's house and walks outside and sees this happening, and it's super weird dream sequence. And that really, I think, makes Chiron confront his sexuality and help find himself and who he is.
Oh, absolutely. And then we see a different side of Kevin when they're together
Oh,
because, yeah.
I'll go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say that beach scene is it's something, man. The way it's shot and acted, it's incredible.
Oh, absolutely. It's shot almost to the point where we feel like we're there with them as well.
Yeah, which feels pretty wrong actually. It's kind of
It,
uncomfortable.
honestly, yeah, especially when the camera's right behind them
Mm-hmm.
towards the end of that scene.
Oh yeah, it's a very intrusive shot, but I think that's the point. You're supposed to feel uncomfortable because that's how Chiron was feeling at that point.
Oh, absolutely. And it's this idea of like, am I wrong? Like, is what I'm doing wrong? Is this okay? And I think this goes back to Juan when they have that conversation together, when he asks him, "What's a faggot?" and Juan tells him like basically like it's okay to be gay. Um, that's just a derogatory term that people use towards gay people. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I think the exact quote. Hang on, let me pull it up. He says, um, "Little goes on to say, am I a faggot?" And Juan says, "You can be gay, but don't let anyone ever call you a faggot." And that was the one line that was like, wow, I really respect this character and how he's helping build Little's confidence and build him into this person that's going to survive in this environment.
Right, as opposed to his mom.
Mm-hmm. Who
That
literally calls him that.
right. That like demeans him like multiple times, and then she holds this idea that she is his mom over his head.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very manipulative and abusive.
Yeah, it's a very strange dynamic, and that makes the scene where he goes to visit her later on all that more impactful, where they kind of have that mending moment where they come together and repair that relationship.
Right, because like she's in rehab at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's very you you kind of see where she's in teal in that point too. She's in a teal shirt,
Mm-hmm.
and she kind of realizes everything that she's done over the years and the impact it's had on him, and then he goes on to tell her that he's trapping, and she has that moment of realization like, wow, like did he like learn this from me? Like,
It's kind of at that point she sees where she could have become a better mother and stepped up, but it's what she was trying to avoid the whole time.
right.
So, yeah, let's talk about Little and Chiron and Black. Like, all three actors did such a great job. The cool thing about that character is you don't really hear him talk a lot. He's so shy and introverted. The whole movie is watching him watch other things happen, and his facial expressions, his body language. really tell the story and do the acting for him to where he never really has to be that expressive. It's kind of like in The Great Gatsby, the main character isn't actually Gatsby. It's this guy that's watching and telling the story about what Gatsby does. He's an observer.
Right, which is really interesting because the whole story is mostly focused on, like you said earlier, the environment.
Mm.
It's the other, and that includes the other characters that he encounters in his life and how they shape him.
Yeah, and the acting really comes across as what sells it. And apparently that kid had only been acting for a couple of weeks. He was in like seventh grade or something and had just joined this acting class like a couple of weeks ago, and he just came in and knocked this out of the park.
That little guy?
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's incredible.
Yeah, he was so good. That face is so expressive and haunting, and every single thing that happens, you just absorb it in. It hits your heart, man.
Oh, absolutely.
So kudos to him. I haven't seen him in anything else. I really want to look up and see if he's ever done anything.
Right, like I hope he gets more parts from that for sure. He was incredible. And the guy that played Chiron as well, just incredible. The guy that played Black very much so gave me a 50 Cent or like a Gucci Mane vibe, like, which I think that was absolutely what the point was for sure.
Oh, that was intentional. Think about how jacked he is. He's become this figure of masculinity on the outside to protect who he is on the inside.
Right, plus the time lapse for sure. It's about 10 years, right?
Yep.
And they don't even go over anything that happened in prison, but that's what or juvie, and that's what became of. And I'm sure he encountered a lot of different toxic masculinity inside the prison as well.
Oh, absolutely. He learned a lot of lessons there, and I think that's the beauty of this movie is it trusts the audience to put together what happened. It doesn't spell everything out for you. You just have to know in your head, oh, he's been through some shit.
Right, which is what I really like for sure, because it doesn't just tell you everything and lay it out there for you on a silver platter. It's a lot of inferring things, and it's a lot of introspection as well.
Yeah, it's a very introspective movie. It kind of makes me reflect on myself a lot, even though I have nothing to do with this character. I have no base relation with this character. I'm a white dude from middle class America, but it hits me in the heart every time, and it says something about the power of this movie.
Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I shouldn't say it doesn't matter. It's the masculinity aspect of this movie affects all of us, whether it be like, it doesn't matter gender, race, anything like that. The masculinity and the effects of it and how it's portrayed affect all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Like even his mom.
Yeah, she definitely tries to force him to become a more masculine person and kind of abuses him when he doesn't want to step into that role.
That, and also her, I guess, untrustingness of men.
Oh, yeah.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Especially Juan, which makes a lot of sense because he's her supplier. She sees that other side of him. Every single character in this movie has two sides, and she sees both sides of Juan and doesn't trust the kinder, gentler side that's trying to raise little.
Right. Which that whole entire scene, because you're so like flabbergasted as to why Paula will not let little go around Juan at all and slams the door on him and everything like that. Then you see that scene between them where she's basing up the street from them, and he goes and knocks on the window and pulls her out. She says something along the lines of, "Don't ask me where I got it from. I got it from you."
Oh yeah, it's a really powerful scene, and to that point, you never knew that they had a relationship outside of Little. So that was another moment where the movie trusts you to make your own assumptions about what's happening in that world.
Right. And I think that moment when the next time Juan sees Little, which is at the kitchen table, that whole am I a faggot
Mm.
conversation, Little or Juan gets Little to talk because he says, "I saw your mom last night."
Yeah, that was really a breakthrough moment for him, wasn't it?
Yeah, kind of piecing the two worlds together, and probably a conversation that needed to be had at some point in time, because I'm sure Little was so confused as to why his mom was so against him seeing Juan.
Hmm. And at that point, he's starting to put everything together. The first question he asks is, "Do you deal drugs?" He's suspicious that there's more to Juan than the kind, caring caregiver that he knows.
Right. But also that shows like a different side in general, because there's multiple sides to everybody, and also just because somebody deals drugs or something along those lines doesn't necessarily make them a bad person,
Hmm.
because we never see Juan doing drugs at all.
Right. It's purely money making for him as far as we can see. And
Right.
he's still a really great role model for Little, who just wants him to survive and thrive. He's literally teaching him life skills like how to swim, which is a whole metaphor for how to swim into adult life and all this stuff. So yeah.
Right. Plus the way he treats Teresa is phenomenal, and I really like Teresa's character as well.
Yeah, she was great. Apparently that was her first like movie that she was in.
Oh, Janelle Monáe was incredible.
Yeah.
I really like that character a lot, and how she interacts with Little and Chiron as he gets older.
Yeah, she really takes him under her wing because that's what Juan wanted, and she just continues to extend that. And we see as Chiron grows up, he kind of tries to become more independent. He ends up riding the bus around the city at night instead of staying at her house because he's learning that he needs to branch out and become more independent from that.
Right, and he doesn't. He's probably also scared of his mom at that point too.
Yeah. So eating was a really big theme in this movie too. In all three acts, somebody takes Chiron, Little, Black, whoever it is, they take them in and feed him, and that's a really symbolic thing that I noticed throughout the entire movie too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of a, well, I'm gonna feed you, now you're gonna talk.
Hmm. Yeah, I think
Tell me.
Kevin says that at the end too. He says like, "I cooked for you. Now if you're gonna eat, you're gonna talk."
Grandma's rules.
Yeah.
The whole Kevin scene at the end is it's just so incredibly well done, and you really see, especially with Kevin's facial expressions and whatnot.
Hmm. Oh, so well acted on both sides.
Oh, absolutely. And I think my favorite part is when Black takes out his grills to eat, and it's kind of like this shedding of this super tough character, but then he immediately puts it back on whenever they get in his car, and he starts pumping. Classic man.
Oh yeah. No, yeah, exactly. And there are several moments like that in that scene where Black has the chance to get up and leave. Like we see a shot of the door when Kevin goes to get him food, or it's all these little moments that he's breaking down and saying, "Okay, this is who I am. I'm not this tough guy that I show on the exterior. I'm allowed to be myself in this moment."
Oh, absolutely. And then he actually goes inside with Kevin, and the first thing Kevin does is he goes and takes off his uniform, and then he puts on a blue shirt.
Yep, blue again.
This idea of masculinity and how it's presented. And that one's almost more of a vulnerability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's shedding this exterior and becoming what they used to know each other as.
Right, he like takes off his front, and then he starts kind of like tearing up and telling him like he basically still had feelings for him and everything like that. And
Yeah, and that was a really intimate, personal scene too. Another one where it feels like, ooh, am I intruding on this right now? Like this is really uncomfortable, but also like such a touching and sweet moment between the two characters.
oh, absolutely. And the way it's shot too, because it kind of starts out and you get the two shot of them. Well, the camera's behind the doorway, so you get the doorway and then the two of them in the doorway, and it's very, and then it goes back and forth, and they're talking to the cameras again, breaking the fourth wall, letting you into their personal bubble almost.
Yeah, and it was a really interesting place to end the movie too, because we don't really see what happens after that. I'm assuming Black just goes back to his normal life. He goes back to Atlanta and does everything that he's been doing, but he's just more comfortable with who he is, and he's embraced that at this point, which is, I think, a pretty good ending. It's not overly cheesy. It's life. It's real.
It is what you make it, and I really respect the director for sure for just kind of ending it like that, where he has that conversation with Kevin, and then you see that last image of Little playing on the beach at night, and he just looks over at the camera like, all right, we've kind of come full circle and become more, I don't know, Curtis. What did you think of that scene, Curtis?
What, the last shot on the beach? That
Yes.
is one of the most memorable shots I've ever seen in the movie. It strikes me, and sometimes I'll just be sitting around not even thinking about that movie, and that scene will just pop up in my head. This entire journey we've gone on with Little, with Chiron, with Black, we've seen him grow from this shy little person into this man who's thriving, and he's fully accepted himself. And that last shot, that kid's face turning around to look at the camera, it's haunting. It's incredible.
I definitely agree with that because it's still like in my head and it's very impactful, and especially the
Oh,
colors.
the blue, it's just like almost a filter over the camera. It's so good.
And it just like resonates with you on an emotional level, and it just like sticks with
And
you.
how innocent his face is, and knowing what he's going to go through in life and who he's going to become. It's it's truly like the best moment in the movie, I think.
Oh, absolutely. It is probably arguably like the most perfect way to end that movie.
Yeah.
And I think Barry Jenkins was just did such a good job in general on this film, and you can tell that he put so much into it.
Absolutely. And it's a really personal story for him. He talks about how he grew up in Miami, so going home to make this movie was like such a touching emotional experience for him, and all the places he wanted to go to film weren't there anymore, so they had to kind of recreate a lot and use what they had to recreate the moments and the memories. So that was pretty interesting too.
Overall, I felt like this movie was so impactful, and it really, I think the whole idea of this character not talking a whole lot and just the interactions with all the other characters, Juan, Kevin, Teresa, Paula, allows you to step into the character a little bit more, or step into that environment a little bit more. And I think it absolutely deserves some Oscar wins.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. Like, this movie won Best Picture. At first it was La La Land, but that was a mistake, so they came back and Moonlight won. And I'm kind of baffled because the thing about that movie that's so impactful and strong is the acting. Each person brought so much to their character and made it their own, and brought so much personality. They feel real. But I don't think, besides Mahershala, I don't think anybody else got nominated. That was kind of a crime.
Oh, absolutely. I think Paula's acting was incredible. That actress, wow.
Who was that? That was Naomi Harris, right? I think that was Naomi Harris.
Yeah. I was like, it's Naomi something.
Yeah, that's all I have. So unless you have anything else to add, I guess we can log off.
No, it sounds about good. like to take another minute to thank our friends at Slow Glows for letting us use their music again. Please check out their albums on Spotify and tune in for next week's episode.
Yeah, I think, Nick, you're going to pick the movie next week, so we'll see what you choose. Thanks for listening.